The Haunting of Time Incorporated. It was just another ordinary Tuesday morning at the bustling offices of Time Incorporated. Employees trickled in, clutching their coffees and chatting about their weekends as they settled in for another long day of meetings, deadlines, and endless emails. But for Ethan Reeves, something felt off. From the moment he stepped off the elevator onto the 14th floor, a bone-chilling cold seemed to permeate the air, sending shivers down his spine and making the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He glanced around uneasily, but everything appeared normal. The same drab cubicles, harsh fluorescent lighting, and tired faces greeted him as always. Shaking off the eerie feeling, Ethan made his way to his desk and booted up his computer. As he waited for it to load, he couldn't shake the prickling sensation that he was being watched. He turned slowly, and his heart nearly stopped. There, standing in the middle of the office, was the translucent figure of a woman in a tattered Victorian dress. Her skin was deathly pale, her eyes sunken and hollow, and she stared directly at Ethan with a gaze that seemed to pierce right through him.
Can you see me?
The ghostly woman asked, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. Ethan's eyes darted around wildly, but none of his co-workers seemed to notice the spectre in their midst. They typed away obliviously at their keyboards, sipped their coffees, and carried on with their morning routines as if nothing was amiss. Yes, Ethan managed to stammer, his voice shaking. Who are you? What do you want?
You must help us.
The ghost woman pleaded, her translucent hands clasped together in desperation.
Only you can see and hear us. Please, we need your aid.
Before Ethan could reply or even fully process what was happening, the ghost woman vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving him gaping in shock and disbelief. He rubbed his eyes hard, wondering if lack of sleep and too much caffeine had finally pushed him over the edge into hallucinations. But as the morning wore on, Ethan couldn't shake the deeply unsettling feeling that something was very, very wrong. The office felt colder than usual, the air heavy and oppressive, and he kept catching glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision. More than once he could have sworn he heard whispering just behind him, the murmurs too low to make out. But when he turned around, there was never anyone there. By lunchtime, Ethan was a jittery, paranoid mess. He practically fled the office, desperate for some fresh air and a chance to clear his head. He grabbed a sandwich from the deli on the corner and ate it in the park, trying to convince himself that the morning's events had just been a bizarre waking dream. But deep down he knew what he had seen and heard was all too real. When he finally forced himself to return to the office, Ethan froze dead in his tracks. The 14th floor was completely transformed. Dozens of translucent figures wandered between the cubicles. Men, women, and even a few children, all in clothing from different eras. Some wore modern suits and dresses, while others were clad in old-fashioned garments that looked like they belonged in a history book. The ghosts moved silently, their forms shimmering and blurring at the edges, but they were undeniably real. Ethan's co-workers were ashen-faced and wide-eyed with terror, as they too stared at the chilling apparitions that had invaded their once ordinary workplace. A few people screamed, leaping up from their chairs and trying to flee, but the ghosts blocked their path, their expressions pleading, "Please, you must listen." The spirits cried out in eerie unison, their voices merging into a spine-tingling chorus. "We need your help, all of you!" Panic erupted throughout the office as people shoved past each other, desperate to escape the nightmarish scene. Ethan alone remained rooted to the spot, his feet seemingly glued to the commercial-grade carpeting, his mind reeling as he tried to comprehend the impossible events unfolding before him. As he watched in stunned disbelief, some of his co-workers hesitantly approached individual ghosts, recognition slowly dawning on their faces.
"Grandpa?
Whispered Priya, the accounting manager.
Is it really you?"
Other similar reunions were playing out all over the office as people realized the ghosts were their own ancestors, returned from beyond the grave. Ethan spotted the Victorian woman who had first appeared to him. Trembling, he approached her. "Who are you?" he asked. "Why did you appear to me?" The ghost woman smiled sadly, her translucent face filled with a mix of sorrow and hope.
I am your great-great-grandmother, Ethan. My name is Eliza, and I died over a century ago in London. But my spirit, like so many others, could not rest. We have been waiting, watching, and biding our time until the moment was right to reach out to the living. And now, that time has come.
Ethan swallowed hard, his mind spinning with questions. But why? Why appear now after all this time? What do you want from us? Eliza's expression turned grave, her voice heavy with urgency.
We have come to deliver a warning, Ethan. A dire message from beyond the veil. There is a great danger coming to your world. A threat that has been growing in strength and power in the realm of the dead. We have seen it, felt its malevolent presence, and we know that it will soon break through into the world of the living. And when it does, it will consume everything in its path.
A heavy silence fell over the office as the gravity of Eliza's words sank in. Ethan felt a chill run through him, colder than any ghostly presence. "What can we do?" he asked, his voice trembling. "How can we possibly stop something like that?"
You must all work together.
Eliza said, her gaze sweeping over the assembled living and dead.
Every one of you, from every walk of life and every era of history, you must combine your knowledge, your skills, and your strength. Only then will you have a chance of facing what is to come.
Ethan looked around at the faces of his co-workers, seeing the same fear and confusion he felt reflected back at him. But beneath that, he also saw a flicker of determination, a spark of courage in the face of the impossible. "Tell us everything," he said to Eliza, squaring his shoulders. As Eliza began to share her story, the other ghosts chimed in, their voices rising and falling like an ethereal chorus. They spoke of their own lives and deaths, of the dark forces they had encountered in the afterlife, and of the urgent need for the living to unite against the coming darkness. One ghost in particular caught Ethan's attention. A tall, gaunt man in a ragged tunic who stood apart from the others, his eyes fixed on Ethan's co-worker, a quiet programmer named Alex. The ghost approached Alex slowly, his translucent hand outstretched.
"Alexander,"
the ghost said, his voice a rasping whisper.
"My descendant. I have waited centuries to speak with you."
Alex's eyes widened in shock as he stared at the spectre. Who are you?" he stammered. The ghost smiled, a grim expression that held little mirth.
I am Lucius Aemilius Paulus, and I was once a Roman senator. I lived through the volcanic winter of 536 AD, when the sun was blotted out by ash and smoke, and crops withered in the fields. It was a time of unimaginable darkness and suffering, a time when the world itself seemed to be ending. But I survived, as did a handful of others. We adapted, we persevered, and we rebuilt from the ashes.
Lucius fixed Alex with a piercing stare, his voice dropping to a haunting whisper.
And now, that same darkness is coming again, Alexander. A darkness that threatens to engulf not just the world of the living, but the realm of the dead as well. You must be ready. You must be strong. For the trials ahead will test the limits of your courage and resilience, just as they did mine so long ago.
Alex swallowed hard, his face pale but determined. I don't know if I'm strong enough, he said softly, but I'll try. We'll all try. Ethan looked around at his co-workers, seeing the same resolve mirrored in their faces. They were afraid, yes. Terrified of the impossible events unfolding around them and the monumental task ahead. But they were also united in their determination to face whatever was coming, to stand together against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. The ghosts began to fade, their forms growing more and more translucent until they were barely visible. But their voices lingered, a final whisper that seemed to echo through the very walls of the office. Remember, they said, their words a chilling promise and a dire warning all at once. We will be watching, we will be waiting, and when the time comes, we will stand with you, the living and the dead, united as one against the coming storm. And then they were gone, leaving Ethan and his co-workers standing in a suddenly silent office, the weight of the world and the fate of two realms resting squarely on their shoulders. The ghostly visitors had come to deliver a dire warning, a message from beyond the grave that could no longer be ignored. Now it was up to the living to heed their words, to band together in the face of the impossible and fight for the very survival of their world. The battle was only just beginning and the outcome was far from certain. But one thing was clear. The haunting of Time Incorporated was just the first step in a journey that would test the limits of human courage, resilience, and unity in the face of an enemy that defied the very laws of life and death. And so, with trembling hands and racing hearts, Ethan and his co-workers began to plan and prepare, knowing that the fate of everything they held dear hung in the balance. The ghosts had warned them, and now it was up to them to act, before it was too late and the darkness consumed them all. To be continued.